Kiriko is now available in comp, so naturally, we will now be talking about Lucio, because that makes sense. So going into Overwatch 1, Lucio was basically a must pick for years. He was an extremely consistent hero in basically every meta for a very long time, until we had our Moth meta, then Brig got added. As time went on, we started to see less of him. We again had a superpowered Mercy meta. We had that Brig that was basically unstoppable on release, so we had some main support competition. And then on ladder, it was somewhat always popular to go, hey, let's go double flex support. You just get more raw power, more raw throughput, and maybe that's better than the utility when coordination is slow. Totally understandable. We're seeing some of that in Overwatch 2 as well. It's pretty popular to go some combination of Zen, BAP, and Anna, so any combination of those three heroes is working pretty well, being a pretty popular thing in Overwatch 2. But I'm going to suggest to you that Lucio is actually the best support right now and basically a must pick for players that know what they're doing, high level gameplay, anything of that. And the reason for that is we're really looking at him as the king of pressure cycles. Or if you want to put it another way, he's your replacement to the off tank. Now, in the old world of Overwatch, you could have situations where the opponents might have to go through 3 or 4 win conditions before they could actually win a fight. And that's pretty cool. We're looking at that. But what you then have is, okay, that's not really true anymore. People can win fights more quickly, fights get solved more quickly, because there's not a second tank to go plug up an off angle. Say a soldier's coming in at an off angle on high ground, and that's just going to mow down and win the fight in Overwatch 1. Well, it doesn't, because a D.Va shows up in their face. A Sigma throws a barrier in their face, and that doesn't work out. In Overwatch 2, that kind of does work out. Unless your Lucio goes up there and knocks them off that high ground with a boop. Well, maybe that's an option. Okay, well, what about some of the other stuff? Like they come in with an ult there. They just walk in, throw down a blizzard, plan to win. Again, doesn't work in Overwatch 1. You've got that D.Va potentially ready to eat it there. Okay, that's not really going to be a thing. But with Lucio in Overwatch 2, you can speed yourself away from that blizzard. You can speed yourself away from the team that just opened the window. You can speed yourself away from the team that is pushing you with a rally, and then go back in after it's over. And this brings us to the concept of pressure cycles. Specifically, pressure cycles are a much bigger deal in Overwatch 2 than they are in Overwatch 1. And this is because the off tank doesn't have that second set of tanky resources to slow the fight down. It used to be that you could blow a bunch of resources. Maybe you're spending a bunch of Rhine Shield, you're spending an Anonade, you're spending your Immortality Field, and then while you're sort of waiting for those things to come back while you're continuing to fight, you have a second tank's resource in the form of DM, in the form of Sigma Shield, in the form of whatever else you've brought to the table to continue to slow things down. That's not here. So you actually need to fade out a little bit. If you don't win with your first bursty use of cooldowns, with your first push in, it's more important that you fall out to more defensive positioning than ever. And who's the absolute best at making your team do that? Well, it's Lucio, of course. Lucio is able to soften the impact of enemy ults, and he's able to strengthen the impact of your ult, run you in faster to follow up on your shatter, run you in faster to use your rally, whatever the case may be there. Those are great things to do when the enemy's answers to your ults are weaker than they were in Overwatch 1. So Lucio, really, really good. He's also good in this particular meta that's a little bit dive heavy. We see a lot of Genji play. We see even more Sombra play as people figure that out. We're seeing some Tracer play at the higher levels. Those are all dive heroes, seeing quite a bit of use that him being able to go peel for is a big deal, especially now that Brig isn't quite as good at peeling them with her losing of her stun on Bash there. So that's really important. In fact, when we're talking about things that are important, we mostly get into Lucio's flexibility. So as we pull this up here, there's going to kind of be 3 fixed positions in Overwatch 2, where we've got the main tank. They're going to be covering one place. Okay, they need to be in one place, no problem. Some sort of DPS has to take an off angle. You need one DPS, maybe both DPS on an off angle. Maybe they get support, maybe they don't. But if you're going to win an Overwatch, you need angles. only way to get angles is to put a DPS on an angle since there's only one tank now. Fine. And then in a lot of situations, if you don't have a Moira or a Kiriko as your other support to go with Lucio, you're generally, maybe a Mercy, you're going to have a backliner there that is going to be sort of behind your tank or sort of set up at the back of the triangle. You can see the video on triangles and how they're the OP shape in Overwatch. And the thing about this backline support here is these are now 3 different positions, and Lucio can support any of them. We know the power of giving a tank speed, giving your Zarya the ability to brute force her way past or to walk her way past another tank to be able to melt the backline. We absolutely love that. That speed is killer. Being able to go over to a Reinhardt to enable them to do the same thing, or maybe giving your Zarya speed to help them stay away from the Reinhardt. Great. Or to stay away from the Orisa. Great, fine, whatever. Being able to go back to the back line to quickly peel off a diver that shows up. Go, hey, I'm going to fight and boop away a Sombra. I'm going to fight and boop away a Tracer. Keeping a ball out, not letting a Winston land his jump right on them. Those are all really important things to do that will mean your support doesn't die as long as your other support themselves, can actually fight a little, do a little, play the game a little bit. Lucio can get back there in a hurry to go help and give them some meaningful help. He's also got the ability, and people tend to think about this less, to support that off-angle DPS. Now, he might not be quite as helpful as having a Mercy over there would be. Don't get me wrong. Sojourn Mercy is going to be better than Sojourn Lucio on an off-angle, but he does have the ability to quickly pull a DPS out of a fight that's not going their way. And that's even more important in the world of Overwatch 2, where we have super powered tanks, where tanks just come in as these monstrosities with extra health and are very hard to take down. Being able to take a DPS away more quickly from a fight that's not looking very good for them is important. And then, of course, he's got the ability to pair with them, though this is a little less important, to finish off a dive if they want to go in deep and get that sort of thing done. So that's really helpful in that he can go support any of the sort of areas of the fight. He has to pick the most impactful one at any given time. You're frequently going to find he sort of starts with the tank to help the tank position, goes back and peels for the backline support when a flanker comes in, and then when that flanker is forced out, we've created an off cycle for that flanker so he can go do something more important, like perhaps, or he can go make a play and such as go dive the enemy backline with someone else, or go force a duel over here because he knows he doesn't really have to worry about his backline support for a little bit because he's created an off cycle, that sort of thing. Or maybe go make a play with the other tank, force it in to be finished, whatever the case is there. And then the last thing that you'll run into, this is really going to apply more lower on the ladder than it is higher, but people are stacking really more than they should, but more in Overwatch 2 than they did in Overwatch 1. Some of this is the fear, the feeling like they have less space when there's not that second tank on the board, the feeling like the one tank is their only source of safety. So you're seeing a fair amount of 4 stacking, and that's just going to give Lucio's passive aura a little bit more benefit at lower levels. You'd prefer that your team spread out, take the good angles. You're perfectly happy to use Lucio's speed to go 2 different places. But hey, that works out. We'll call it something. So that's really what we're looking at. If you haven't already considered Lucio, consider him. He's really good. This is the time to climb with him if you want. He works just fine with Kiriko. They're both very flexible supports in how they work. You think of a support like Mercy, she really wants to be helping your DPS. You think of a support like Lucio, he can do some good stuff for your tank with speed. He can do some pretty okay stuff with your DPS to pull them out or help dive with them. He can do great stuff for your backline with peeling. He's got some really good tools there, some really nice flexibility, and Kiriko is much the same way. She obviously works really well with DPS and that she can help try to make assassinations happen on the backline. That's great. She obviously works okay with tanks and that she can put decent throughput healing on them. She doesn't have the burst healing, and a Lucio-Kiriko combination won't have amazing burst healing, but their flexibility in, hey, neither of them are very vulnerable targets, and they're both good at helping both tanks and DPS is going to work pretty well as a team there. So that's what we have. If you have questions, let me know in the comments down below. If you're enjoying the content, drop a like, consider subscribing for more thought-provoking Overwatch 2 content, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Temporal out.